Hi, everybody. My name is Dawn Payne, and we are here today with our podcast, Brave New Worlds, a series of thought provoking conversations with global creative pioneers and business leaders to chat about the future of marketing, brand, and technology. Of course, in these unerringly volatile times, never has the need for that big breakthrough thinking and creativity been more important for society. And what we want to do with our chats is to inspire people with stories of how businesses and creative people are making a difference and reimagining the very definition of marketing during these times of extraordinary shifts and change. We're going to explore the future of marketing and brand, discuss the latest trends and technologies in the modern marketer's playbook, from the metaverse to employer brand, and from the role of purpose, bravery, and brand building to the rise of the influencer. We're going to unpick and unravel the myriad of challenges and opportunities that leaders today are going to grapple with as we continue to forge our way in these brave new worlds. So joining me today, I'm super excited and fangirling out and to have the wonderful Dr. Joe Twist, OBE, joining me today. Amongst many, many things, Joe is the CEO at UKI, which is the Association for UK Interactive Entertainment. Thank you so much for joining me today, Joe. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. We were chatting before we started to record about the fact that we had a lovely little moment at EGX where we started to get into all things metaverse and Web3, and I thought, I like the cut of her jib. I think I need to have a bit of a longer chat with this lovely lady. So here we are today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Brilliant. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, should we jump straight in, Joe? And first up, obviously during the last few years of bonkersness and challenge, can you talk to us about your own creativity and perhaps what new approaches and experiments you've taken, both perhaps for yourself and also for your business?
So I'm in a very interesting position because I'm obviously a CEO and I have a responsibility to the team who usually are the most creative ones. They're the ones who get the job done and come up with ideas and so on. But we're also a trade association, so we don't make games ourselves, but we do run a lot of campaigns. We try and figure out how best to support the industry, which is very fast moving. So I guess during the lockdown period in particular, it was really interesting because as a CEO and as a people leader, you have to kind of really readdress how you do being a CEO. It was very much the case that the games industry was completely thriving, unlike a lot of other sectors. We had to continue to tell that story to government and keep focused, but at the same time, recognizing that a team of people is full of humans, and you're not going to be successful as an organization unless you're supporting them, unless you're giving them autonomy, unless you're trusting. And actually, there were extra measures and extra things that we did need to put in place to keep motivation, to support these teams of people, particularly as we've now settled into this hybrid way of working, particularly at Yuki and in the games industry. And that requires a lot of hard work in other ways and creativity to make sure that you're, continuing to collaborate, continuing to, again, really focus on gluing people together and staying focused on the mission that you have as an organization. And my own creativity, it was, again, I'm very fortunate to be in the games industry. I love being in game worlds. I also really found my way in finally to Twitch, which I now have on my second screen on in the background all day because it sort of replaced that sort of back office chatter kind of thing. But it's just full of the most amazing creative people. I tend to follow a lot of Scottish people because I'm Scottish. A lot of comedians, musicians, people who are just chatting, or doing sort of hobbies or doing their craft or making things. So for me, like I love watching other people who are far more creative than me do things like that. But I did experiment with doodling.
Okay.
During lockdown, and now I think I should just turn them all into NFTs and make a fortune and retire.
Or not, as the case may be. Well, that's definitely a novel one for me, Joe. I've not had anyone talk about doodling as the new creative outlet before, but I absolutely love that. And I think that the Twitch thing is really interesting as well, isn't it? Almost deriving your energy from kind of other people's creativity, which I'm also a big believer in as well. So yeah, absolutely love that.
I am a creativity vampire. That's how I'll describe myself as.
Yeah, no, I've often used the same thing of I do a lot of mentoring, and I'm vampiric in that respect as well. And that these poor people think I'm there to help them, and I'm just extracting all of their energy in the session. Talking of NFTs and segueing from NFTs into Web3 and metaverse. And I know that that is obviously quite a provocative space and quite a provocative conversation. Before we perhaps get into some of the challenges that I know you've talked about in this space before, I mean, what opportunities do you think there are for brands for collaboration in this new emergent space?
Well, I think even before I sort of took on this job 10 years ago in the games industry specifically, I've always been interested in that intersection between humans and what humans love doing and technology. And, for me, I mean, I did a doctorate, I did my PhD about online communities and young people in the late 90s. So it was a very different environment, but the conditions or the traits of what people love doing remain the same, which is talking together, hanging out around together, sharing their passions around something, and really just communicating and forming communities. And so for me, it's a sort of continuation and a real evolution of that. And I think what we learned in the early days of Second Life, for instance, and a lot of these social virtual worlds, which is what I call them, which are not game worlds. So they're not massively multiplayer online worlds, but they can be. But they're just places where you're hanging out together. Was that people always need something to do, and whether that is just kind of fanning over, a particular thing, or whether it is kind of doing a mission together, or whether it is building something together, or if it's solving a problem. People love to have, humans love a reason to be there. It was, again, sort of looking at the early days of the internet, people often said, well, why would I go online? And it's like, well, exactly. Why would you? Okay, well, here's the things that you can do. So motivating people into spaces is really important. And for brands, I think it is about understanding the community and the context of the space that you're occupying and the reasons why you're there as a brand. I think too often in the advertising space and agency space, people are given a sort of brief to achieve certain objectives with a campaign, and it's very sort of flash in the pan, or it's very much a we need to do this within a 3-month period, rather than we need to build a relationship as a brand with these people who are in this community. And I think brands that get it right understand that. They understand that also people like to create. Again, humans are always going to be humans, because creativity can mean being a really vocal member of a chat community on Twitch, or on a Discord server, or being a top maker in a particular given world like Minecraft, or having the best, most popular game on Roblox. So people are driven by those kinds of things. And so understanding that that's important part of the fabric of online communities is critical to success. So there's so many exciting opportunities. And if you look at the ways in which these social virtual worlds, like whether it be the just hundreds of millions of experiences on Roblox, or the stages and performance spaces that places like Fortnite provide you, there's so much exciting opportunity if you look to the future, because this is going to be the way in which we expect to be entertained
I
in the
think it's
future.
fascinating, though, isn't it? I think in terms of the piece that you touched on there, Joe, about the implications for marketers to be so much more
Mm,
really long term focused in terms of how they approach their kind of marketing.
yeah.
Because, in a way, and again, I've kind of been on the other side of the table on this, where you'll have, as you say, a campaign with a finite beginning and end, but it is a completely different way of thinking about it, isn't it? Which is an always on, very intuitive way to build knowledge and understanding and relevance of those very kind of distinct communities, actually, because they will all have their
Yeah.
idiosyncrasies and different typologies and different types of gamers and players that sit within each of those. And I think, as you say, it sometimes can perhaps be a little bit broad brush in terms of how people are trying to
Yeah.
approach it. Are there any kind of particular brands that you think are doing well in this space, or not?
Um, I can think of a few. I mean, I think it's brands who I think it's more useful perhaps to look at characteristics. It's brands who understand that
Yeah.
authenticity, right? So who are going to particularly trust people who have lived experience, if you like, of being part of a particular
Mm-hmm.
community. And sometimes it just, sometimes there might be unexpected brand presences in certain communities. What I get a little bit weary of is seeing a sort of
Yeah.
stereotypical brand in doing a really great brand collaboration, but it sort of seems to be kind of looking at what we see as a
Yeah.
stereotype, perhaps, of someone who is a
Yeah.
gamer. For instance, like I am a 49-year-old woman who loves games, and I would like to have brands that are
Yeah.
recognizing me as having perhaps deeper pockets than a
Yeah.
29-year-old woman who plays
Yeah.
games. I don't know. I just think that there's so much more kind of opportunity to be brave and courageous
Yeah.
as a brand with different communities in game
Mm.
spaces, because games are very varied. We haven't really got our I don't like the term metaverse as a singular thing. I think it's a bunch of spaces that are persistent that might be
Mm-hmm.
connected up
Yeah.
in the future, but at the moment it's anyway. But there are so many different places that you know that that there's a huge audience. I am obsessed with TikTok at the moment. I resisted TikTok like I did with Twitch for a long time, and now I just don't know where I get time to do anything. But TikTok for me is incredible because of the algorithm being so sensitive to what I am
Yes.
looking for, or not even looking for, what I enjoy. So and it has made me. It's converted me to spending money, and that's the
Yes.
critical part. It has converted me to changing my entire makeup regime, and I have new products now
Isn't that
that
incredible?
nobody even knows what they are, but I
Yeah.
have new products. I've got down here these stupid things. Look, these that you
Yeah.
stand on and you twist on them as you're standing on your
Oh,
desk. So, but
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I know you put them on either foot, but it's that context. I feel like I'm very much going into a TikTok world when I'm on TikTok for 30 minutes. I confine it to
Yeah.
30 minutes a day. But that's I know that that's a context, and the brands that
Yeah.
are there and the things that are being
Yeah.
served to me
Yeah.
are relevant. And why is that not happening in more game spaces or in more places like Twitch where people like
Yeah.
me are?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think one sector that we've been kind of observing that's really embracing kind of, as you say, persistent worlds and metaverse and Roblox and such like is the fashion industry. It's quite
Mm,
interesting, isn't it? Because you've got, I
mm,
mean, all of them, Gucci, Balenciaga, I mean, Balmain, I mean, the list just goes on. I mean, not necessarily with that sector in mind, but do you think, because I think we've talked a lot about what brands need to do to better engage in the game
mm.
space, is there anything that games can learn at all from other brands to perhaps just think about it from the other perspective or not, in terms of how they do their marketing?
Well, so I'm not. I mean, I'm not a marketing expert, and I don't know what my focus is very much on the
Yeah,
games industry. I suppose the games industry itself can be quite insular
yeah,
looking. Sometimes it can just assume that this is my audience and this is the
yeah,
demographic, and this is I'm not going to take a risk
yeah,
outside of that. So sometimes it can be on
yeah,
both sides where. that experimentation or that courage to do something different isn't
Yeah.
quite happening. Um, but you only need to look back at classic examples like what Nintendo did with its advertising campaign to see how you can learn for other
And,
from
and,
other
and
sectors as well
I
and
was thinking
completely
that
change
as
the
you were
game.
talking, Joe. I mean, I've always been a queen of magpieing. Um, and I think
Yeah,
actually, I think where it's interesting, as you say, is if you look at what's happening in another sector and you then apply it to another sector, in that mashup,
mm,
there's actually quite an interesting kind of innovation. And with a lot of the stuff that we did at Nintendo, particularly when we were starting to bring in celebrities and such like, I'm going after a female audience. I was often taking cues from people like Marks and Spencer's and how they were using
yeah,
celebrities to appeal to different types of female audience. So I'm a massive fan of looking out of sector to get that kind of marketing inspiration. And I do
yeah,
tend to agree with you that I think that it can be a little bit kind of same old techniques that can
yeah,
sometimes be deployed.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd agree with you on that. And then I think final question, Joe, because I think we've whizzed through this at a rate of knots. I think and this is quite a philosophical question and a fun question, but generally, against the backdrop of how tough things are in life right now, other than
Mm.
games, what else is exciting you right now?
Well, I just think the direction of travel of artificial intelligence, the direction of travel of NFTs, and the whole Web3 suite of tools, I think is really
Mm,
interesting. I think there is some resistance in certain parts of the industry. I think particularly what AI is doing, I'm loving seeing people's AI generated
yeah.
art, for instance, and people on Twitch are really playing with that a lot. But it does bring with it a lot of
Mm-hmm.
challenges. I think but I think it's a really exciting area. I think that the way in which perhaps more traditional sectors in the cultural and heritage sector have realized that probably what they should have been doing is embracing technology and digital engagement and experiences a lot sooner than they had, or in a way that's more
Mm-hmm.
sustainable. And are now kind of looking at immersive experiences as a part and parcel
Yeah.
of what they do, I think is really interesting. So, and I am endlessly fascinated with TikTok. I really am. I don't know where that's headed. I was a big fan of kind of Clubhouse as an audio
Yeah.
persistent world that you knew was always there, even if you
Yeah.
weren't tuning in, and you could drop in and out. And that's how I feel about TikTok to a
Mm,
certain extent. So, I think the whole metaverse concept is very exciting for me. I'm a huge fan of VR, but I want more meaningful experiences. I want it to be easier. I want it to be more inclusive. I want it to be more civil. And those are the exciting challenges that I think we as entertainment industries need to really
yeah.
grab hold of. I just think in terms of how it changes, technology changes the tools of creation, how the film industry and TV industry are embracing virtual production. I just think it's such an
Mm-hmm.
exciting time to be a creative and with a love of technology.
Well, I think off the back of this chat, Joe, I'm going to be looking at my TikTok a little bit more because I feel like I'm missing a trick there. I'm going to get a bit of Twitch action running on a second screen. Um, and I think the
Uh
other
huh.
piece as well, where again, I think you're right. I think some of those other kind of cultural sectors are just doing some gorgeous work at the moment. I love a lot of the work that the museums are doing terms of how they're using kind of, all kinds of different realities to kind of reimagine it. My husband's a history teacher, so I think that's part of it, that I just think it's such a wonderful way to kind of reinvent things that were maybe, starting to kind of lose their audiences a little bit. Um,
Well, I mean, I do think just as an additional closing comment. I mean, I just think that people misunderstood games for that reason and turned it into gamification, which I don't think is. I think it's the bad application of games and what motivates
mm,
people. Games should be in every classroom for that reason because you can learn anything by playing a
sure.
game and you make it
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. I love the idea of that, Joe. So our closing thought is let's actually get video gaming as a GCSE on the core curriculum. If we can achieve that between us, I think our work is done.
Brilliant.
Well, listen, we are finished with our podcast, Joe. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been a genuine pleasure. chatting with you and hearing all of your kind of wonderful thoughts and insights. So thank you, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you.